Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Business as Usual podcast. This is our November 2020 episode. We are very glad that we waited a little while to record this because we're recording this on the 1st of November. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but there was some pretty big news yesterday, and it would have been a bit of a shame to do this without that. This is our, as we've said last time, we're going into a one-a-month kind of system now with our podcasts where we're going to try and put a lot of information in and make it a little bit more interactive once a month. So this should be posted early November and the next one will come in December. Just a reminder that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at businessaupod. That's on the screen so you can see. Also, you can subscribe to us on YouTube if you go to youtube.com/A-level business.
Right, so in this month's podcast, I should say, we're going to start off by looking at just a couple of news stories. So we're going to look at the UK lockdown and the effect that that's going to have as we re-enter for the next month. We're going to also look at HSBC being the first to change terms and conditions of current accounts. Jack's going to take you through productivity versus efficiency in 5 minutes. Then we're going to be looking at this month's big student misconception, and then we will review one entry that we particularly liked from last month's question on the fitness market, and we're going to provide you with a new case study that you can get your teeth into looking at market segmentation, which is a topic that most students think is fairly straightforward but tend to struggle to maximize marks on.
Yeah, so let's get straight into the news. And it's Sunday, it's the last day of half term, and we planned to record this during half term. And for a variety of reasons, we were a little bit busy, so it got pushed back. And then the plan was we were going to record it on the 31st. And we had a little bit of a conversation and realized that it would be pretty stupid to record a podcast when we were waiting for Boris to announce another lockdown. That seemed like it was pretty much nailed on to happen. And so here we are. Lockdown 2 is going to last until the 2nd of December. It's going to kick in on Thursday. So early November. It's going to last about 4 weeks, just short of 4 weeks. And it's effectively, they're trying to avoid calling it a lockdown. I think that's a pretty clear strategy. They're also trying to, it seems like it's a little bit more of like a tier 4, isn't it, for England? We've obviously been in this tiered system for a few weeks now. And it seems like this is a tier 4 where for the next 4 weeks, everyone's going to be on lockdown except for certain businesses. And then after that, they're going to lift the restrictions depending on the caseload in the area. So it's all going to be geographical. But they obviously feel, and I don't know if you watched the presentation yesterday, but the data seems pretty overwhelming that this is the only option for the UK for the next few weeks. Now, in terms of the actual logistics of how this affects businesses, all businesses are going to close. So gyms are going to be closed. Most retail stores are going to be closed. You're only going to have the essential retail, so the food shops, etc. And pubs, takeaways, and restaurants are going to be closed as well. Or as Boris Johnson would say, restaurants. They're going to be closed as well unless they do takeout. So it's going to have a huge impact on businesses, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the main spokesmen for the Restaurants and Pubs Association came out and said that this could be the final nail in the coffin to a lot of restaurants and pubs. So yeah, and they've also seen some big retailers such as Gap looking to exit the market and switch to a franchise model where they throw all the risk onto the franchisee. So there's big changes coming in business and especially retail.
Yeah, I've got my partner's sister and her husband or husband to be both work for a big brewery company, so one of the big chains that have pubs all across the country. And so we actually lived with them during the first lockdown, and so we were hearing all sorts of interesting meetings over Teams and what have you. And they were just talking about how can they adapt to stay alive basically during the first lockdown. And it's clear that actually, even though pubs have been open, it hasn't been very profitable. A lot of them are losing money, and especially obviously when they're managing a pub firm that operates across the country, and you've got different lockdown restrictions and different tiers of restrictions in different areas. They were getting calls on a daily, like several calls a day from from pubs basically saying, we can't survive this. The first one was the 10 p.m. curfew, which effectively means that for a lot of pubs, they would only be able to sit one family or one group of people for a meal because you didn't have that turnaround time to get a second table in before closing. So effectively, that was half in their revenue anyway. And this obviously now with the closure for just and a full closure for the next month. I asked my future sister-in-law what that meant for whether they were going to change back to like a takeaway only service, and her response was basically that she doesn't think they're even going to bother because it didn't make them enough money to be worth the time. So I'm expecting that the vast majority of those employees, and they've got thousands of employees across the country, will be put on furlough, and I imagine it's going to be the case for most pubs across the country, unless they already have that takeaway set up. It's unlikely that they're going to even think it's worth doing. So this one potentially could be even worse, even though it's shorter. Could potentially be even worse for a lot of those businesses, especially sort of the ones that don't have the financial backing of a big company behind them, or the ones that are franchises or independents. They could really, really struggle.
Yeah, I mean, even the big firms, like you talk about, the big breweries have got shareholders to answer to, haven't they? So they're going to be looking to sell. I mean, the FTSE has taken a big crash in the last week or so. We've been expecting this, and I think the big problem is that even after this lockdown, and we come out of it, say in December, where they're going to be waiting for the next one, aren't we? So it seems like it's inevitable that we're going to have to come in and out of lockdown until
Yeah.
there's a vaccine, which who knows when that'll be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the one topic that I really think it's a really interesting one. It's one that a lot of year 13s probably won't have studied yet, but will be coming to in the next sort of 6 weeks or so. Is the topic of scenario planning. So looking at potential situations that could unfold and making sure you're prepared for them rather than having to react to them. And I think a lot of businesses should have hopefully been doing that. A lot of businesses should have been expecting that this lockdown might have happened or might be on the horizon. And so hopefully what we'll see is businesses are a little bit more prepared for it. That being said, you can't really prepare for just having all of your revenue cut off. And so hopefully it seems like they're already going to extend the furlough system, the furlough scheme for another month, and hopefully there will be other things involved for businesses. I know that the leisure centres and gyms will be closing, and they'll be looking for some sort of bailout or some sort of funding package from government to keep them going. Obviously, as they're gonna lose their revenue for the next month as well.
Yeah, we've had the arts having had help bailouts already, haven't we? So they'll need some more. It's going to be tough decisions on who deserves what, the economic problem.
Yeah,
Um,
without a
so
doubt.
it'll be interesting.
Let's go at the second one then. So this one, so a lot of businesses already charge for some kinds of current accounts. I pay for my current account because it gives me a few little additional benefits. But historically in the UK, the basic current account, a current account being one that most people would use for the vast majority of their transactions. They would get paid into it and they'd pay their bills, and their spending on a card would come from a current account, have been free. And I actually didn't realize this until doing the research for this story, but it's actually not the case across the rest of the world. It says in the article there, the HSBC already charges for most bank accounts in other countries such as Canada, the US, and France. So some customers are used to paying for these banking services, but effectively, what it does for HSBC is it creates a new revenue stream for banks, and that is important because, and this is where it links to the coronavirus and the lockdown, etc. The interest rates are historically low at 0.1%, and so as a result, they're not receiving the kind of money they would receive from interest rates in the past, and so they're having to figure out new ways of generating revenue to keeps themselves going.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who works in one of the major banks, and he's talked to me for years about the problems of current accounts and how they actually make a loss on every current account that is opened, and that he didn't understand why we didn't charge for current accounts. So this has been inevitable to an extent. So HSBC leading the way with it. I reckon all the rest will follow. Maybe nationwide as a building society will not possibly. With the whole community helping the community kind of brand image. But I imagine it'll be a fairly nominal £1 to £5 a month charge. But it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah,
And
It's
it'll be
coming.
interesting to see whether they offer anything in addition to, anything to justify the cost, basically. Like, so mine's about £13 a month, and that is with Nationwide, and it effectively gives me, like I say, it gives me free breakdown cover, free insurance for mobile phones, free travel insurance. So it'll be interesting to see whether they try and like offer a few services in addition to kind of justify this charge, or some services that maybe they offer elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the other key problem is that a lot of them, in the eyes of, say, middle-aged, 40 to 50 and older customers, year-old customers, they're going to be getting less of a service with, a lot of branches closing down, having to go online. So some customers may see themselves getting offered less and being charged for the pleasure. So it could be tricky. We might see some price competition in the banking market that's not interest rate related.
It's definitely gonna be one of those things where I agree with you, where the one will do it, and it won't backfire terribly, and so everyone else will do it, and within a year or two, it'll be commonplace. So the last story is, I mean, it's not really a huge news story, but I thought it was worth mentioning, just given the relevance to what we do as business studies teachers at A level and GCSE. There was a rumor recently that Woolworths was coming back, and it was basically a Twitter account at UK Woolworths said that the store would be returning, and everyone, Woolworths, despite the fact Woolworths hasn't existed for a good what now 15, 20 years maybe.
Got to be, yeah.
Um, Despite the fact that it closed a long time ago, there's obviously a lot of nostalgia with it, and so a lot of people were like getting excited, even though realistically, I don't know if that Woolworths model would work anymore. And it turns out that the company that owns the trademark of Woolworths came out and said that they had nothing to do with it. And it turns out that it was basically a Twitter joke led by an A-level student, and that's why I thought it was worth mentioning, because if you are the A-level student who did this joke, let us
Good on
know.
you.
Should we get them on? We'll get them on the podcast. Um, yeah, basically, an A-level student said that they had been studying online marketing. They'd obviously done a little bit about how people can use social media, and how I guess the teacher taught them about how social media can't necessarily always be the most reliable source of information. And so I thought it was worth just chucking in. With less than 2,000 followers and no website, announced that the store would be returning. So I've put a key link to the curriculum there in organic growth, because that would be what Woolworths would be doing, but it is a joke. So there are really no
Organically grown for nothing.
no
It'd be a
links
new
to the.
startup, wouldn't it, again?
It would, yeah, it would. An
I mean,
interesting
there's no
story though.
chance it'd work. Yeah, I mean, it made me smile, but I instantly thought there's no way that's happening, um, because it didn't work before Amazon, let alone with Amazon. So yeah,
Yeah, and
Woolworths would be doomed from the start, I think.
it would pretty much have to become what Wilkinson's is, wouldn't it? Where it's like, you know, lower price kind of products, like a little bit of a low cost producer. Just sort of one of those general, those shops where you go in and you can get something of everything really, but nothing really specialist. You
Yeah,
just
doing like battle
yeah,
with the discount. Well, Aldi kind of do a lot of that now, don't they?
yeah, that middle
And in
aisle, and
their middle
Tesco, and
rows, or
all the
yeah,
supermarkets do.
tricky.
Yeah, but worth putting in there. So obviously, if you are the student who did this, let us know. We'll get you on. We'll do a live interview with the new the new owner of Woolworths. That's our news bits done. We're now going to have a little bit of a look at one topic that I think sometimes it's just two key terms, but I think students quite often get them confused. And so we're going to have a little bit of a look at productivity versus efficiency in 5 minutes. So there's a key area of operations and the impact of productivity and efficiency on a business, and sort of within those production facilities of manufacturers, their primary focus will be on lowering unit costs and reducing waste. And so I've put you'll notice there's two basketball players on the screen. I'll explain that one in a second. But productivity is how many we produce, and efficiency is how much we get out of the resources used. And so I think that it's always one of those sets of key terms that sometimes students get confused with, or swap around, and can't quite understand the relevance of each. So I just wanted to share the way that I teach it, because it just seems to be to be honest, it's the easiest way that I remember the two, and it seems to be working for my students. So if we've got two basketball players pictured on the screen and they have 3 minutes to take 3-point shots, then we've got these two, by the way, two of the best shooters in sort of basketball history. Let's say that we've got Stephen Curry on the right, and he takes 30 shots and he makes 16. And then we've got Klay Thompson on the left, and he takes 50 shots and makes 21. So the questions I would ask are who's the most productive and who is the most efficient? Now, Mike, I mean, do you want to add a little bit onto this?
You want me to answer the question?
If you can,
Right.
are you
Okay. So
confident?
the guy on the left, I know Curry. Who's the guy on the left? Is it Thompson
Clay
or something?
Thompson, yeah,
Yeah,
Clay
it's Thompson.
Thompson.
Cool. Right. So we'd say Clay Thompson would be the most productive because they're outputting the most in the given time. However, his efficiency is pretty poor because he's not sinking as many of those 3-point shots as Steph Curry is. With no surprise there. So you would then have to work out the percentage that he actually makes, I guess, for wastage and
Mm.
doesn't make.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Curry clearly he makes more than half, doesn't he? And Clay Thompson doesn't. And I think the sort of follow up to this I would always ask the students is which is better. And there's always a tendency to lean towards the Stephen Curry model and say, well, actually, Stephen Curry's better because he makes a higher percentage. But that's not necessarily what a business wants, is it? Sometimes it is. Sometimes a business wants higher production, and sometimes a business wants to make sure that they're more efficient. And so, I'm a basketball coach, and so I probably, depending on who it is on my team, I need someone to go out and make 21 shots. Equally, I need other players to come off the bench and maybe only take 5 shots, but make 3 of them. So from some players, you want efficiency because they're not gonna maybe you don't have the resources to use or have the resources to waste. But if you're like a mass producer, for example, and your primary goal is to make sure you've got enough production to meet the demand, then, in that case, productivity might be something that's more important.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, you're right. These are two key terms that students do mix up. I mean, the usual two key terms in this topic that teachers focus on is productivity versus quality, isn't it? And I think a lot of teachers miss out the productivity versus efficiency kind of argument. So yeah, it was. I was glad that you picked this out, Jack.
Yeah, I always love a basketball reference, and I think this is a pretty nice one to remember. I think it's a pretty easy one to remember, because it just takes it away from looking at a business for a second, but it's easily applied to a business. You could replace the shots for a certain amount of wood, for example, and instead of trying to make 3-point shots, they could be trying to make small wooden chairs or something like that. And
Hmm.
if you've got 30 stacks of wood and you make 16, or you've got 50 stacks of wood and you make 21, the difference between the productivity and the efficiency there in terms of wastage, which then links to a bunch of other topics, like things like lean production and production methods, etc.
Awesome. Right. So moving out of our key topic in 5 minute section into the student misconception of the month. So this is one that year 10 and year 12 students are probably having hammered into them at the moment if you've done your first assessment. So students often mixing up entrepreneurial characteristics and the roles of an entrepreneur. So this is, again, one of the key things that students are mixing up. So it's key to remember that the roles of an entrepreneur are what they should do from starting up a business, which is role one, running the business, role two, and then growing the business, yeah, role three. Whereas entrepreneurial characteristics are the skills and qualities that an entrepreneur should have to be a successful entrepreneur, like risk taking, organization skills, etc. Organizing resources, I think, is the exact way Edexcel explain it. But they are similar but not the same. So an entrepreneur must have the characteristics probably to carry out the roles well. But the roles of an entrepreneur, if you see that in a question, they literally mean what should an entrepreneur be doing, whereas the characteristics are what should they have as a quality to be able to do the roles well. So watch out for that one. Had lots of zeros out of 4 and twos out of 10 for
Mm.
isolated elements of knowledge here and there in the assessments that I've been doing recently. So don't trip up on that one. It was in an examiner's report. I think it was 2 years ago for both AQA and Edexcel. That this is a key mistake that students are making. So try and avoid that one.
Are there any that cover both bases? I was just thinking like risk taking, for example. Could that be
No,
a
well,
characteristic
technically,
and taking a risk is a role, or the sort of the decision to take a risk?
no. So technically, starting the business is taking a risk, but the actual role is starting the business, and you'd have had to have taken a risk to therefore start the business. So the
Mm.
the risk taking would link to the starting the business. So if you haven't got the risk taking quality characteristic, you probably wouldn't have fulfilled the role of starting up the business. And if you didn't have the organizing resources characteristic, the ability to organise, then you probably wouldn't run the business very well in the second role of being an entrepreneur. But I can see why students get mixed up, but you have
Yeah,
to,
no
yeah, try
doubt.
and really separate the skills and qualities from the job they are doing.
It's one of those where, you know, and I feel this way regularly, is the sometimes when students read a question, they can focus on the wrong parts. And this is just a further evidence that you need to really focus on what the question's actually asking you for. If you just see the word entrepreneur and you assume that that's going to be characteristics of an entrepreneur, you've got to make sure you're paying attention to what the question's actually asking you for. Because as you see, we've got terms that are so close in terms of wording that you've got to make sure you get the right one, and you're focused on what the answer, and then hopefully you'll see the clues in the extracts that are available.
Definitely, I mean, the efficiency and productivity one like you picked up, is
Mm,
often misconstrued as well. Students will see efficiency, and all they want to talk about is productivity.
yeah,
So
no
yeah, you
doubt.
got to be careful. There's a lot of these in business. I didn't really realize until I started thinking about it, and marking a bit more for the example and stuff. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So that's we've gone through quite a bit of content there. The last thing we want to do is just go through an A level and GCSE exam question. We set one last month. We've had a bunch of people send them in, and we've put a one on. We've put an example of a one from an A level student that we received on the screen. So Mike's going to talk through this very briefly. Then we're going to introduce some new questions for this month. And you shouldn't just be doing one or two questions a month. You should really be doing questions each week if you want to really develop that exam skill, because it's not just about necessarily revising the knowledge. It's also about making sure you're practicing the structures, whatever structure it is that your teachers provide for you, if they provide a structure at all, so that process becomes automatic, and so that as time goes on, you don't even have to think about how to structure a 10 marker. It just kind of organically happens. So we've got the first one was from the extract we provided last week, which was about a health and fitness business. A young person called Emily had based her decision to start a business around her own personal experience. Mike, do you want to talk through the answer that we've received?
Yeah, so thanks to the student that sent this in. A very good answer. So I'll just really briefly kind of say what I like and what bits I would improve if I were giving feedback. So really, the student's done really well. The first paragraph is beautifully developed, slowly, yeah, developed. They haven't just said, she wants to help society and then left it there. The student has fully explained that why there's a problem. There's a lack of gyms. They've brought in the fact that Pure Gym, as a competitor, aren't offering this service, which is excellent. Always encourage students to bring a competitor, if you know them, into the answer for application. And yeah, they've just really nicely explained why there's a social and personal satisfaction element
Yeah,
to her motivation, which is, yeah, beautiful in that first paragraph. I couldn't
yeah.
really
It's
improve that first paragraph.
It's nice that, like, obviously the students brought in the fact that it's a niche market as well. So they're not just answering the question. They're not just talking about the non-financial motives, but they're also it's really demonstrating that the student has a knowledge of key terms from across the course and is able to bring those in, um, so I think that really stands out.
Yeah, definitely. The second paragraph is good. I would say it's not quite as nice as the first paragraph. It does bring in non-financial, so it shows a broad understanding of the two broad categories of motives that can make an entrepreneur start up a business. It comes in at the end though. So
You mean
what you'll
financial,
notice
yeah?
is, yeah, so
Yeah.
sorry, financial. They've put
Mm.
non-financial at the start. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Yeah, financial in the second paragraph. So if we look at it at the end, it comes to profit and looking to 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 actually make a profit and succeed, I suppose, in this paragraph. But they've started off in a really applied way and said how they've noticed profit can be made, which is a different approach, but an interesting one. And they still get to the same point. The only thing I would maybe say is to encourage to start with the motive and then build upon that motive, but still very good. And then the conclusion is good because it doesn't just repeat itself, but it doesn't bring in a whole new point altogether, which we try and dissuade students from doing. It just builds upon one of the key points the student thought they made. So they've brought on the fact the lack of accessibility for
Mhm.
people with disabilities is the main thing, and that's their objective. So the only thing I would say is maybe link in the fact that that is clearly her main objective, for her business, and that links to her motive
Yeah.
to round it off slightly better.
Yeah,
But
that
I'd
little
say that's a
link.
strong 8, 9 out of 10.
So well done. If you recognise it, then it was your answer, and well done to you. We've got some questions for this month then. So we've got a little bit of a case study on the tutoring business. So this is one that Mike knows very well. The market for tutoring and sort of giving students extra help outside of the classroom. And we've got a question for year 10 and 11, which is a 6-mark question. So discuss the benefits of effective market segmentation to, how are we saying that? Is that Kumon or Kumon? Is
Kumon.
there
I mean, I definitely do not
Kumon?
work for this business, by the way. um, have no links to this
Kumon?
business. Just one of the
Kumon or
leading
Kumon?
franchise,
Yeah.
Kumon, I think. But I mean, students, if we're
Fair
wrong,
enough. If
post
yeah,
it in the bottom.
they'll let us know. Their tutoring services limited in Hearts and Enfield. Then we've got a question for year 12. So a 4-mark question. Explain one benefit of effective market segmentation to Kumon Tutoring Services Limited. And then in year 13, we've got a 10 marker, so another 10 marker. So assess to what extent effective market segmentation is key to the success of this business. So we will put there's on the website, there will be a link to to the documents to download, to fill in some answers on the stuff that we've covered so far, and to have a go at these exam questions. And you can email them to us at businessaupod@outlook.com. And we will read through them and we will share a good example of one of the questions on the next month's podcast, just so we can give you some feedback and give you maybe hopefully a little bit of a model answer as well. I think the one that we showed this month was a little bit of a model answer. So hopefully you'll find all of that stuff useful. Hopefully we've covered quite a few of the bases, and we will see you guys on the other end of the lockdown when we get to December and things start to hopefully open up a little bit. Hopefully we're going to be a little bit in a little bit of a better situation than we are now. Please stay safe. Please make sure that you are following the guidelines as appropriately as you possibly can. And just remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BusinessAUPod. We are going to hopefully be doing a few more little quizzes on Instagram and so on a couple of times a week, just so that there's a few little things you can be interacting with. And obviously share this with whoever you can, who obviously studies the subject. If someone doesn't study A-level business, then this is a GCSE business. It's probably not worth sharing. Thank you very much.
Yep. Cheers, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next month.